Shalom, everybody. Welcome to this week's journey through Torah. This week we're in Behaalotcha, is when you go up or when you kindle. A lot of things to be said in this week's parsha. We talk about kindling the menorah. The interesting thing, when you kindle it, you're kindled so the light shines forward. And we can talk about the light shining forward, about He is the light of the world, and all of these things, all amazing things. But we're not going to get into those today. We're going to talk a little bit about resurrection. And I believe this falls in with the light shining forward. There's a lot of topics to cover in this parsha. We have the menorah, we have the silver trumpets, we have the ark, and all of these things are amazing things, but I want to touch on the resurrection, and I'll show you why. I believe that the picture of the ark, symbolizing the heart of Yahweh and the heart of you, your heart, all working together, and a picture of that presence of Yahweh there with the ark is a picture of resurrection and a picture of us being gathered together to walk with Him. So there's a lot to be said here. All right. So remember, all these things that we find in the Torah we see in the Messiah. We see that Yeshua came and fulfilled all these things in the Torah, but to fulfill these things doesn't mean He wiped them away, that He did away with them, because these are all these things that testify of who He is. Yeshua said, "For if you believe Moshe, you would really, you would believe me, because it was about me that he wrote these things." All the prophecies that are there, they have to remain there so that the people can see this is who He is and how it all works together to help build the body. So let's kind of back up a little bit and let's look at a few things, all right? So we're in Numbers chapter 8:1 to chapter 12:16, and we're actually going to start in Luke right now. We're going to go to Luke chapter 24 and verse 27. It says, "Beginning with Moshe and the prophets, he explained to them the things written about himself in all the scriptures." Okay, so remember, after his death and burial, his resurrection, before his ascension, Yeshua is walking on the road. He encounters these two guys on the way to Emmaus, and he's like, "What's going on, guys? Why are you so sad?" They're like, "Well, this guy, he was the Messiah. We really thought he was going to do all these things." And Yeshua opened up and expounded the scriptures to them, right? Going down a little more, we have verse 44 and 45. He said to them, "These are my words which I spoke to you while I was still with you. Everything written concerning me in the Torah of Moshe and the prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled." He then opened their minds to understand the scriptures. So we have a picture of Yeshua saying all that was in the Torah, all that Moshe wrote and in the prophets and even in the Psalms were pictures of Him. But He opened their hearts, He opened their minds so that they could see it. They hadn't seen it, so He revealed these things to him. So the Torah and the prophets show the heart of the Father. They show the heart of what He was doing. They show restoration. And if we are following Him in that, then it will lead us to that place of relationship with Him where we come before Him and we repent. We see the need for that, and then He meets us there. Again, we have another picture of that with the parable of Lazarus and the rich man, right? So we know that the story, Lazarus, he was a poor man, he died, and outside the gate of the rich man didn't care, and then later on, the rich man dies, and what happens? Okay, so Luke 16, verse 27 to 31. "So the rich man says, 'I beg you, Father Abraham, send Lazarus to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers to warn, so that they will not also come to this place of torment.' But Abraham says, 'They have Moshe and the prophets, let them listen to him.' But he said, 'No, Father Abraham, if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent.' But Abraham said, 'If they do not listen to Moshe and the prophets, neither will they be convinced even if someone rises from the dead.'" Now, knowing what we know, we can see what's going on here, right? But understand, in the parable, the rich man is saying, "No, send someone back from the dead to tell my brothers about this." And the testimony is they have Moses and the prophets. So things that we need to bring us into that relationship, to bring us to a place of covenant decision, all this is in Moses and the prophets. And I'm not discounting the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, at all. I'm saying that all the things that are in the Torah and the prophets show us these things that are revealed and opened up in the Brit Hadashah in the New Testament. So we have to learn to follow Him, walk with Him, and He will reveal all these things to us, right? Okay, so we learn this in the camp. It says that Israel, at the command of Yahweh, the Israelites, they broke camp, and at the command of Yahweh, they made camp. So as long as the cloud was stayed over the Mishkan, they stayed there. When the cloud moved, they broke camp, they packed up, and then they moved on. But they didn't do it in their own time. They didn't do it their own way. They did it as Yahweh commanded them. Okay, and as they did this, they followed the cloud, but they didn't just follow the cloud. They followed the ark. So the ark went before them. We also read, like the ark went before them in battle, right? Again, the heart of the Father going forward. They followed his presence, his heart before them anyway. We're going to jump into Numbers 10, 35, and 36 here in just a minute. But before we do, I was reading an interesting commentary from the Jewish Study Bible, and I want to kind of share some of this stuff with you. It says that when Aaron, he set out, the ark travels with the people throughout their journey to the promised land, reminding them of God's presence in the camp. So when the ark was set out, it traveled with them to remind them Yahweh is with them, all right? It says the Ark of the Covenant contained the tablets of the law, symbolizing the entire Torah given to Moshe by Yahweh. Just as Aaron was the focal point of Israelites' existence in the desert, so too the Bible must always be the central focus of our lives. So the presence of Yahweh was to go forward, and they were following that, and contained in that was the heart of the Father, his word given to us. And as we go forward in life, we need to follow that as well. Okay? So when the ark traveled, it is said it went in front of the camp, and then Israel followed it. And then we have an interesting phraseology of this. What's written here in verses 35, 36, it's about the song of the ark is the way that it's given, which I always found that interesting, the way it says that, the song of the ark. The Torah was written as a song, many say, and each Hebrew letter has a not just a numerical equivalent, not just a meaning, but also a musical notation as well. So it is a song that is sung, a song that goes forward. So we have this song of the ark. It's a victory song that praises Yahweh as a warrior, as a defender of Israel, which he is. The insertion here is also related to the first word of the song, binsoa, that's given there. So it picks up on the key word of travel for the ark. So here the ark is understood as God's chariot, that which he travels upon, that which he goes forward. And this is even part of the liturgy that's used in the Torah service, right? As the Torah scroll comes out of its ark, it is, rise Yahweh, right? Let your enemies be scattered, all right. And then it has the return, where it says, return to the myriads of thousands of Israel. This is also, again, a picture of showing Yahweh as a warrior, right? Like Yahweh Tzavaot, the Lord of hosts, he is a warrior. So again, showing he goes forward, he goes before us, and he comes back and he returns to us. He is the one who, Yahweh Tzavaot, the Lord of hosts. And again, he goes before you in battle. He goes before you in victory. And that means you're going to have to follow him out onto those things sometimes, right? So now, this really amazing thing. All right, so we have here, as the ark is about to go forward, it doesn't just get up and go. We see the cloud moves. Moshe makes a proclamation, and then the ark travels. And then when they get to where they're going, there's again another proclamation as the ark comes to rest. And it's these two things I find amazing. Okay, so one, when the Aron was set out, Moshe would say, "Advance, Yahweh. May your enemies be scattered, and may your foes flee before you." And when it halted, he would say, "Return, Yahweh, you who are Israel's myriads of thousands." Interesting phrases, interesting things that's given here. So Numbers 10, 35, and 36, this is what we're talking about. And I submit to you that it's not just the hearing these things, but in how these things are written that we start to see some amazing things being opened up to us. All right. If you read in the Torah scroll, there are two Hebrew letter nuns that are inserted into these two verses. And it's kind of like parentheticals. Okay, kind of like how you would use parentheses. So it's bookcasing these two verses. Many of the rabbis say that there's enough teaching in these two verses of Scripture to be a whole book in and of itself. So there's a lot to be said here when you really start to unpack it and open it up. But when you look at in a Torah scroll, we have these two Hebrew letters, nun, that is written here, but it's not just written in their normal way or their normal fashion. They are written upside down, inverted. So what does that mean? Does that mean something? Well, yes. Understand the Hebrew letter nun means even in the ancient Hebrew letters, it means like a seed or a fish or something that's sprouting, a quickening of life, a continuance, that which is just springing the life. So that's what we're talking about here. But if you have something that means something that springs to life, or like a seed that sprouts, or perpetuation of life, we have that, but it's the opposite. It's upside down. Well, what's the upside down of life? Death. But if we have death, but the letter still means life. What could this mean? An inverted nun would be the quickening of life from the dead. It would be that which is dead, but it's life. It is living. It's resurrection is what we're talking about. And we see this throughout many places in the Torah. And I'm going to show you a few places today that talk about, opening up the scriptures, revealing the Messiah, how he would have to be resurrected. So we have in the Torah a few different places we're going to talk about today that talks about resurrection, that shows resurrection. And I'm not just talking about like when Eliyahu prayed and the child became alive, Yes, that's amazing. But I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about resurrection and symbolizing the Messiah. Okay? So let's look at a few things here. Job 14, 12 to 15 says, "So man lies down and rises not. Till the heavens be no more, they shall not awake nor be raised out of their sleep. Oh, that you would hide me in the grave, that you would keep me secret until your wrath be past. That you would appoint me a set time and remember me. If a man die, shall he live again? All the days of my appointed time will I wait till my change come. Then you will call, and I will answer, and you'll have a desire to the work of your hands." Job is talking about being resurrected. He's talking about waiting for the time for his resurrection. He's trusting he is going to be resurrected. Though he die, he will live. How could that be? Because this is what Yahweh has promised for his people, to live with him and have life with him. Isaiah 26:19 says, "Your dead will live, my corpse will rise. Awake and sing, you who dwell in the dust. For your dew is like the morning dew, and the earth will bring the ghosts to life." Interesting as we read this more in a literal way, where it says, "Your dead will live, my corpse will rise." This could literally be read as, "Your dead will live, my dead body will raise them." So again, it's a picture of Yeshua and his death and his resurrection. And in his resurrection, we have life. Amazing things when you really start to open it up and look at it. Romans 6, 1 through 11 says, "What shall we say then? Are we to continue in sin so that grace may abound? May it never be. Can we who died to sin still live in it? Or do you not know that all of us who were immersed into Messiah Yeshua were immersed into his death? Therefore, we were buried together with him through immersion into death, in order that just as the Messiah was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, so we too might walk in the newness of life. For if we have become joined together in the likeness of his death, certainly we will also be joined together in his resurrection, knowing our old man was crucified with him, so that the sinful body might be done away with, and so that we might no longer serve sin. For he who has died is set free from sin. Now, if we have died with Messiah, we believe that we will also live with him. So we know that the Messiah, having been raised from the dead, no longer dies. Death no longer is master over him. For the death he died to sin once and for all. But the life he lives to God. So also continually count yourselves both dead to sin and alive to God in Messiah Yeshua." So how would Sheol even have the idea of saying that Yeshua did this resurrection, he is the resurrection, all these things here, if he didn't have just the picture? I mean, I know his account on the road to Damascus. Okay, we got that. But these are symbols that are shown through the Torah, who Rav Shaul would have known very intimately, right? Okay. Matthew 22, 31 and 32. Yeshua says, "But as touching the resurrection of the dead," why would this be an issue? Because they read about this in the Torah, because this was an idea that's in the Torah, that's in the Tanakh. So he says, "Concerning the resurrection of the dead, have you not read that which was spoken to you by God, saying, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzhak, and the God of Yaakov. God is not the God of the dead, but of the living." And he said this where? At the burning bush. So we have the opening chapters of the book of Exodus where Yahweh is revealing he is the God of the resurrection. He is the God of life. He is the God of restoration, right? Okay. Colossians 2:15 says, having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it. How did he triumph over them? Because he was resurrected. It's not just about his death. It's about his resurrection, his ascension, right? Job 19, back to Job. Job 19, 25 and 26 says, I know my Redeemer lives. See that? Job acknowledging he is my Redeemer and he lives, and that he will stand at the last day on the earth, and that though my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh I shall see God. It's amazing how this is written, because it says, my Redeemer lives, and he will stand. The word stand is kum, which means rise. So I know my Redeemer lives, and he will rise on the last day on the earth. The word there means dust, earth, or clay. And though my body is destroyed, in my flesh I will see God. If your body's destroyed, how can you in your flesh see him? Because he gives you a new body. He resurrects you and gives you new life. He gives you a new body. And these are the amazing things that we're called to. So when we have this passage of scripture, Numbers 10:35, where the ark sets forward, he says, arise, Yahweh, and let your enemies be scattered, and let them who hate you flee before you. That's talking of Yeshua's resurrection. Like we read, he spoiled principalities and powers when he rose. I know my Redeemer lives because he rose, right? So that's talking about his resurrection. And then when it comes to rest, he said, return, Yahweh, to the many millions of thousands of Israel. That's our resurrection. Because guys, at this time when we're talking about it, there wasn't that many of Israel to be said, right? I mean, yeah, there was a couple million, but not as many as implied here. So we're talking of a future event. So we're talking about Yeshua's resurrection, and we're talking about your resurrection and being part of his people as we go forward into that. Romans 14:7-9 says, for none of us lives for himself, and none of us dies for himself. For if we live for the Lord. If we die for the Lord. So whether we live or die, we belong to the Lord. For this reason, the Messiah died and lived again so that he might be Lord of both the dead and the living. Wow, amazing things we have there, right? So I promised you some prophetic references that talk about the resurrection, right? Let me give you a few. Psalm 16:10 says, for you will not abandon my soul to Sheol or let your Holy One see corruption. This verse is also cited in Acts 2:27 and 13:35 as a prophecy of Yeshua's resurrection. So again, this was understood as a prophecy of the Holy One of Israel, as the Messiah. This is stood as a prophecy of him. And guess what? It was. Psalm 49:15 says, God will ransom my soul from the power of Sheol, for he will receive me. Isaiah 53:10-12, so yet it was the will of Yahweh to crush him when his soul makes an offering for guilt, and he shall see his offspring, and he shall prolong his days. Out of the anguish of his soul he shall see and be satisfied, because he poured out his soul to death, yet bore the sin of many and makes intercession for transgressors. Again, this suggests life after death, because how can you make intercession if you're dead? Okay, so we have again a picture of death and being alive and intercession. And Hosea 6:2 says, after 2 days he will revive us, and on the third day he will raise us up that we will live before him. So while this again is directly addressing Israel, this is also given of Messiah's resurrection and a picture of him in that. And then Job 19:25-27 we already read. My Redeemer lives, right? And in my flesh I will see God. Psalm 22, verses 22-31, describes the suffering Messiah, verses up to chapter 21, talking about the suffering of the Messiah, talking about the images of the cross or the crucifixion stake or whatever you want to put in there. The passage talks about triumph and resurrection, and it says, I will tell of your name to my brothers, for he has not despised or abhorred the affliction of the afflicted. All the ends of the earth shall remember and turn to the Lord. So again, we're talking about a resurrection, and we're talking about how's he going to talk to his brothers if he's not there, right? So he is alive and he is living. Psalm 30, verse 3 says, O Yahweh, you have brought up my soul from Sheol. You restored me to life from among those who go down to the pit. That's resurrection. That's life. Psalm 118, 17 and 18. I shall not die, but I shall live and recount the deeds of Yahweh. And Yahweh has disciplined me severely, but he has not given me over to death. See that? Though he died, he became alive. Isaiah 26, 19. Your dead shall live, their bodies shall rise. You who dwell in the dust, awake and sing for joy, for your dew is a dew of light, and the earth will give birth to the dead. Again, we reference that as well. And in Ezekiel 37, talking about the valley of the dry bones, right? It talks about, yes, Israel's resurrection, but also contains resurrection imagery that the Messiah would bring, that he would bring all Israel together and be one before him. Amazing things we're seeing there, right? Zechariah 12:10 says, I will pour out on the house of David, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, a spirit of grace and pleas for mercy, so that when they look on me, on him whom they have pierced, they shall mourn for him. This also being linked with Zechariah 13:1 and 13:6 and 7 about the wounded shepherd who is God's companion. Again, pictures of resurrection and pictures of the Messiah and the things that he desires to show us. He is alive so you could live, right? What about not just some direct references, but what about typological references? Let's look at a couple other things there. Jonah, right? Jonah, 1:17. His 3 days in the belly of the fish. Again, we see in Matthew 12:40, just as Jonah was 3 days, right? So we see that. In Genesis 22, Isaac's sacrifice or near sacrifice, the binding of Isaac, is also symbolic of a resurrection when Abraham receives him back. And we also see that in Hebrews 11:19. And in Daniel 12:2 and 3, where it says, many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some shame to shame and everlasting contempt. And again, so while this refers to resurrection, it establishes the concept of resurrection from reading through the Tanakh. What about Joseph's story? Joseph being cast into the pit, presumed dead, later is seen as exalted and the ruler of the world. Again, showing a picture, it's symbolizing the type of going down in the pit and being presumed dead and being left for dead and all these things. But then, no, he is ultimately the one who has risen as the ruler of the world and the one who can give the bread of life. Exodus 3, at the burning bush, remember? He is not the God of the dead, but the God of the living. Leviticus 14:4 and 7, the two birds in the cleansing ritual for the cleansing of the one who had leprosy. One is killed, the other is dipped in the blood and released. Again, prefiguring, showing a type of a symbol of death and resurrection being sent out. Now, one of the things we see here is that because of this resurrection, there is an equipping that goes with that. We're not victorious because Yeshua died. We're victorious because he died and rose again. So all of these things showing us he is the one who has conquered death and hell and has called us to other things. And because of that, we have these pictures and these symbols of how Yahweh gives his spirit to his people, right? He can do that because he is alive, because he is living. And we see pictures of that, like when Israel was in Mitzrayim and he brought them out. Remember the process he went through here? He said that Passover, when he bring them out, was a type of redemption. He says he redeemed them, and he brought them through the water, right? That's like a mikvah or a baptism. And he brought them to the mountain to reveal himself to his people by his word, by his spirit, to equip them to go into the promise. That Yahweh walks within them as they go forward into the promise and everything that he has called for them. Well, we see another picture of that here. In Numbers 11, verses 16 and 17, Yahweh said to Moshe, bring me 7 of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be elders of the people and their leaders. Take them to the tent of meeting so they may stand with you there. Then I will come down and speak with you there, and I will take on some of the ruach that is on you. Keep phrasing here. I will take from the ruach that is on you and place it on them. And they will carry with you the burden of the people, so you will not be carrying it alone. So we have different pictures or events that show us the deliverance and redemption of the people, but then a giving of the Spirit of Yahweh to equip them for what they're called to do. And Yahweh said he took of the Spirit that was on Moshe to give to them. Well, why would he do that? Why would he do it that way? Why wouldn't he just impart from his Spirit to them directly, which he could do? But why did he take from the Spirit that was on Moshe, which was the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, but why did he take it from Moshe and give it to them? Because the people were to see, yes, though they're serving Yahweh and doing this, they are helping Moshe in their task. Because Yahweh established Moshe and the words that he would give for all Israel to walk in. And so they were seeing that their role wasn't just helping Yahweh, their role was also helping the body. And testimony of that, Isaiah 63:11, when the people had turned away from Yahweh, they remembered Yahweh. And it says they remembered the past, the days of Moshe, the servant of Yahweh, and they asked, where now is Yahweh who saved the leaders of his people from the sea? Where is Yahweh who gave his spirit to Moshe? So again, the testimony of Yahweh's spirit, his presence being with his people. Now, a couple of things here. One, where it says, I will take some of the spirit that is on you and put it on them. Rashi compares this to a candle, which, you may have heard this many, many different times over, okay? You're supposed to be like that candle. You light others. And because you do that, it doesn't diminish the light you give. It actually adds to the light that is around, right? It doesn't cost you anything to light another candle. But yet, it benefits everyone if you do so. Much like that's what's happening here. The spirit that was on Moshe, which was the Ruach HaKodesh, was there and was to not just light Moshe, was to light the leaders, light the elders, so that they would in turn bring light to all Israel, which is a picture of the menorah. The menorah in the most holy place, or in the holy place, was to give light not just to the holy place, but to give light to the world. And some literature, the menorah is called the light of the world. And it's, again, when Yeshua said, I am the light of the world, there was more being said there than just saying he is the light, which he is. John chapter 1 speaks of that. That was at the very beginning, right? But this menorah, this lamp, the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, testifies that when it was built, the windows were not built to let light in. They were built in a way to let light out. In other words, the menorah that is in there, the testimony of that is so that it would bring light to the world, which we see in Isaiah 42:6 and Isaiah 49:6, where it says that Israel is to spread light, to be a light to the nations. And that's why when Yeshua says, I am the light of the world, it meant something. But don't forget, guys, Yeshua also told his disciples, you are the light of the world. So just as he is the light that is in the world, we are to show that light as well, because he lives in you. John 20, verses 21 and 22. After Yeshua says to them again, Shalom Aleichem, as the Father sent me, I send you. And after he said this, he breathed on them and he said, receive the Ruach HaKodesh. Again, he took of the spirit that was on him and he imparted it to his people. He imparted it to his disciples. Why? To equip them for what was ahead, to equip them for the task, to equip them for the labor of the harvest, to give them what they needed to go forward in life. Matthew 28:18-20, Yeshua says this, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. So see y'all later? No. He said, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me, so you go. How could he charge them with something if he has not equipped them to do what he's charging them to do? I mean, is he just making the statement, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me? No, he's telling them that because that's what I have given you. And then he says to go and to make disciples of all nations, immersing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Ruach HaKodesh, teaching them to observe all that I commanded you. And remember, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. So again, in his death, burial, and resurrection, he charges us to continue living in that light, in that life that he has given to us, that we walk in his spirit, in his ways, and that as we go forward in here, as we're walking toward the ultimate promise he has given us, everlasting life, that we share that with those that we come in contact with, that we share that hope, that we share that life, so that we can truly help bring that peace to the world. Be that light to the nations, be that light to those around us and those he's called us into. It's a lot in there, isn't there? We didn't even touch on the trumpets or a little on the menorah, but not really in depth. There's a lot in there, guys, but that's all we're going to cover for today, okay? So I hope this has been a blessing to you, encouraged you, challenged you a little even, right? And if this has been a blessing to you, then please share it. Whatever avenue you watch or you listen to these, please share them, help get this out there. If it's blessed you, it's going to bless somebody else. So help us in that. And if this has been a blessing to you, then please consider making a donation to help us continue to put these out there. Okay, we can only do that because you equip us to do that. All right? So until next time, be blessed, be a blessing, and shalom.